Welcome to SBS335 Digital Ethnographies. This is Juan Jose Gutierrez, and I'm going to be introducing the readings for this second module of Unit 1 of Digital Ethnographies. We're going to be talking about social networks, that is, the abilities in the social networks, personal communication, and social networking sites, all of which are elements that you're going to be exploring in the reading. Social networks defined and the readings that you're doing defined as new spaces of social interaction. New spaces of social interaction challenged through channels through emerging technologies. So I know that one of the principles that we studied in the first chapter was that whatever happens online in terms of human interaction is on in very similar ways than what happens in the physical world. And the principle comes from the idea, I think it's a pretty sound idea, that who we are doesn't change regardless of the arena where we deploy who we are. However, it is also true that in the physical world as well as in the online world, certain contexts are enabling contexts or constraining contexts. And part of what we're going to be reading about this week, it really talks about how the digital can be an incredibly enabling space for folks with disabilities. But I want you not to lose sight of the fact that we're going to encounter and we're going to be subject to many elements of many limitations and many manipulations that the internet can exert over us. So it's again like the physical world. You have the enabling factors and then the constraining factors. So first of all, let's go ahead and explore this idea of the world of disabilities in the digital age. I posted on our discovery page, so I'm not going to play the clip here, but I want you to play it. This presentation by Amanda Baggs, and I'm hoping that you're going to be, if you haven't seen it before, that you're going to be impressed by. First of all, I think you're going to find yourself disoriented as to what is it that I'm watching, and then hopefully you're going to be impressed by a form of communication and a message that is really powerful and that really hits to the core of who we are as humans in terms of trying to connect and disconnect. And in this case, to connect with people with disabilities. Amanda Bax is going to show us how she has used the internet to translate her positionality so that we can interact, but her position will be militant and will be demanding of respect and understanding of a world that is so different from the one that we're used to if we're not a person with disabilities, particularly with important disabilities like the ones that an autistic person is facing. Um, I think some of the features that are presented to us in terms of the reading will be important in that it will makes us reflect about our positionality with regards to people with disability. There's an emerging and a growing body of literature on the impact of digital media on disability. So if this was a topic that you're interested in exploring, I think you're gonna be really satisfied with so many views and perspectives that are out there. Um, it, the digital really provides a whole new world of possibilities for folks with disabilities and filled with recognition and with potentials. So it'll be interesting for us to reflect on that one. Isn't it interesting that we can really use the digital realm to liberate people that are otherwise not connected and not considered in their personhood as they probably should. So Communication, as I'm stating here, is facilitated in new ways for people with disabilities or people that otherwise will have difficult time connecting socially. So it's not just people with strong disabilities, as I said before, but maybe some of us are by nature a little bit more timid, or we feel a little bit intimidated in the physical presence, and then we feel a little bit liberated in terms of expressing how we feel and showing others and sharing with others our thoughts and our connections. Um, One of the things that educators have considered is whether or not, for example, an environment where, let's say, for example, think of middle school, in which the relationship, gender relationships are so complicated and there's so many things going on. In some environments in which only women are in the classroom, only girls are in the classroom, sometimes that generates an advantage to girls in that some of the elements that are at play, socially constructed, if you like, but that are at play between boys and girls, will tend to give advantage to the boys. So um, it is just to say, not that I'm not in favor of separating classrooms by gender, but I'm saying that I think we have to be cognizant of how the social, immediate social contexts will give certain groups of people certain advantages or disadvantages. We need to explore those advantages and create contexts in which everybody has the same opportunity to shine, to learn, to project who they are, and in similar ways. But to do that, we need to really understand the differences that are there, the diversity, the plurality of the social spaces that we live in. In that sense, this commentary by Amanda Baggs should really help us in our reflection in that direction. In terms of approaches to personal communication. So in the piece that we're reading, Stefana Broadbent is going to be helping us consider a couple of really interesting questions from an anthropological perspective. First of all, she wants us to think about the consequences of the proliferation of new communication media. What is all this literally bombardment of information and accessibility to so many different forms of accessing information? What is this doing to us? To what extent is this changing our perception of the political realm, of the social realm, of ourselves? And some of the hypotheses will tend to say that this is making us more social, and some others are actually leaning in a totally different direction, pointing at the fact that this might be isolating individuals. If you look at kids and how they actually are mostly or many hours just inclined in front of their devices, that's actually kind of a troubling sight when what you expect is for kids to interact with each other. Oftentimes they are interacting, but in a different way. So there goes the question, and it is for us to contemplate. Second big important question is what is the contribution that ethnography in the ethnographic research can provide as we aspire to understand this big question and questions about what is the media doing to us, right? So those are the big leading questions of her, the piece that we're going to be reading for her. Apparently, the digital media is just really helping us expand our horizons in ways that we were never able to have before. Just communication, think of it. And we can be in many different places in a substantial and significant way just by being connected through the phone. Are we witnessing then the death of distance? Is distance no longer relevant? Oftentimes I wonder about it. I have, for the longest time, I've had my children living far and away in different continents from where I am. But the beautiful invention of remote communication has been great for me. So the distance is not as significant as it was when I was much younger. And I remember I used to have my sister living in Spain, and I was living in Mexico, and getting a letter from my sister was a big event, or making a phone call from family to family was very expensive, and it was an event. Nowadays, you just hop on the phone and you're communicating on a daily basis without even thinking about it. So to answer these questions, we're going to have to be exploring and digging down into different places and the digital dungeons that are out there to see what's going on there, right? Or we can simply take a look at our phones and see what's going on in our phones. Let me play this short clip that will give us a little glance at what might be happening
Now,
digitally.
you're in for a really
This is the
special treat
LiveWorks
tonight.
19.
Fortune magazine recently named Peter
So
Diamandis as one of the
it's a
world's 50
big
greatest
conference
leaders.
about technologies
Diamandis is the
and
founder
the
and
emergence of
executive
new
chairman of the
technologies.
X Prize Foundation, which leads the world in designing and operating large-scale incentive competitions. He's also the executive founder and director of Singularity University, which is a global learning and innovation community that's using exponential technologies to
So
tackle the
this is
world's biggest
the
challenges
coolest
and build a
of
better
the
future for all of
introductions with
us.
the coolest of the
Now, as an
jackets ever.
entrepreneur, get
So
this,
what this guy is doing
Diamandis
is
has
he's
started over
introducing
20
the
companies
key
in the areas of longevity,
speaker, the
space,
keynote
venture
speaker for the
capital,
event.
and
And the
education.
keynote speaker is going
He's
to
also
be introducing some of the technologies that are emerging in in the planet today. So I posted this video on online so that on the discovery section so that you can explore that. But I just want to play for you a couple of moments in which he's referring to the incredible changes that the digital
in the
is
same year,
exerting in our world.
2012, that Kodak
Let's
declares
take a listen.
bankruptcy, another company, also in the digital preservation of memories, called Instagram, gets acquired by Facebook for $1 billion. But they've got 13 employees. And I've given this moment in time when a linear thinking company gets displaced by exponential technologies a name, I call it the new Kodak moment. Now, when Instagram got purchased by Facebook for $1 billion, people laughed at that price. But today, it's worth $100 billion on their balance sheet. This is what happens when you hop onto an exponential growth curve. So here it is, that yellow line falling off a cliff is film photography, and that red
So
line
the point
is your digital
that the
happy
presenter
pics,
is making, of
trillions
course,
of them.
he's a big business
And we're going to
person.
see this
He's
over and
showing
over again,
how
where an old style
the
of
changes have
technology
been
or
so
business model
radical
is getting
that even
disrupted
people
and
that were at
displaced
the top of their game in
by
terms
a
of knowing
digital
what was
transformation.
coming and investing and whatnot couldn't
Here's
see
another example,
coming
if you guys
the
remember a blockbuster.
incredible exponential growth of
So
some of
here's
these
Blockbuster,
technologies
again,
around
falling
us.
off that,
And then
that
he goes on to showing and exploring some of those technologies and again presenting how the technologies have been applied. Uh, Further ahead, he's going to be talking about mobility and the advances in mobility, and again the incredible changes that technology are bringing to our world. It's a really interesting video, not so much in terms that I would be endorsing the mindset and the things that they are promoting, but it really reflects where the minds of those
and spatial computing, Web
promoting
3.0.
the
I mean,
technological change
amazing, right?
in our
Talk about a
days,
transformation of
where their mindset
education,
is. And these
advertising,
guys are
retail,
actually do
everything
having
we
an
know. The
impact
world's about to
on us
come
as
alive.
consumers.
Yeah, it is. In a way
So
that
in that
we
sense, it
don't
is important
conceive.
to
Are those
recognize
air
that
glasses?
technology
No,
is
they
making
look like,
these
yeah.
incredible changes.
We have a question here.
But
Please
then
share
again,
some of
going
the
back to our interpersonal communication, the question remains the extent to which this technology is transforming us and the way we communicate, right? So is this going to be intensifying our social relationships as it seems to be doing oftentimes? Or is this going to be triggering a process of individualization? Think of what's going on with this particular course. You normally go to a classroom, and I prefer, as you probably do as well, a classroom. We interact, we can see each other faces, and we're interactive in seeing each other. Right now, you're just watching at an image of me, and I'm not looking at you, so I don't know how you are receiving what I'm saying. I'm just hoping that it will make sense to you. In that sense, I'm in my office right now, enclosed and sort of isolated in real terms from the rest of you. On the other hand, that doesn't mean that we're not establishing a relationship, because later on in the week, I will be reading your responses and your reactions to what I'm saying and to the materials. So the relationship that we have is real, just as real as the one that we have in the classroom. And sometimes I get to hear more from you using the digital, because in the classroom we always have the wonderful folks that tend to be more talkative than others, and there's a group of students that tend to lead the discussions, which is great. But on the other hand, that stops us from listening to everyone, and honestly, I get to listen to all of you in ways that I cannot in the physical classroom. So, what is it? Are we isolating ourselves, or are we actually magnifying our social presence? And that's a big question for you to consider, and for the reading to help you consider, right? This is a wonderful picture with the kids without the phones, but this is what I look at. This is what concerns me. Three children sitting at a couch and not interacting, not playing, but just looking down. And we see this more and more. But it doesn't mean that they are isolated, as it seems to be the case, but they're connected in different ways. Maybe they're playing among themselves with these games. So ethnographic research seems to be a really good way of engaging these questions. Um, it will definitely help us explore and try to gather information to test these two potential hypotheses. The new media is isolating us, or the new media is actually hyperconnecting us. So new media is not necessarily creating new social connections on a global scale, but is rather intensifying small group and highly intimate relationships. So let me make this point. In most of the groups that we are in, Facebook or Snapchat or WhatsApp or whatever media you use preferably, normally what we do is we intensify the communication with the family, with students, with people with similar interests. Not so much new social connections, but it's an intensification of it. So that's part of what we could be exploring if we use an ethnographic approach. Some of the questions we can ask is how and when the technology is adopted. Is it added to existing forms of communication? Or is it meant to tackle new conditions? Like right now, can we have a job without being capable of using, in an expert manner, new media? I don't know. Those are good questions. So, one of the things that we do quite well in ethnography is to actually look for information where people are interacting. And in that sense, it's part of what we're going to be doing this semester. I'm going to be challenging you and asking you start looking for sites where you can conduct explorations. It's not ethnographic research proper, but it is definitely an exploration of a site, of a social networking site, a place where people are interacting, are coming together to go about their lives and explore and express and carry on with their interests in their life. So social networking sites turned out to be something much closer to all the traditions of for an anthropological study of social relations. In other words, and this is going back to the principles that we explored. The social networking sites seems to be um, conducting their business very much so in the same ways in which we would do elsewhere. So, in a traditional ethnographic research, for example, you will study immigrants and you will walk with them. You will see how they arrive to place or do the migration, do the walking, do the crossing, do the arriving, How do they engage with existing or new networks of communications that they have? How they start working, making a living, having children, being transformed, and transforming the place where they live. That's a traditional side. Well, it seems like as we start exploring these networking sites, what we're seeing is that the types of human relationships and interactions that happen are very similar. And in that sense, the tools that we normally use in a physical site are very much so adaptable to what we're finding on the social networking sites. So this is sort of a graphic representation of networking sites, right? So a series of individuals connected around an idea or a place or an interest, and then in doing so, they connect to others, and that's our social work. It's a series of networks of communication. So we're going to be selecting some of these different groups and trying to understand how are people connecting. It can be, for example, a group that is interested in cars, that is interested in in knitting, that is interested in you name it. And those groups will have leadership and conflict and transmission of knowledge and growth and wealth and all those things are happening. So a particular tribe or group has a physical geosocial location. We're going to use a metaphor, and we're going to try to find a physical location for the tribes that we're going to be exploring. But the one thing that I can tell you is that we're going to find and we're going to see how we actually impose in these places our traditional normativity and forms of relating to each other. For example, Facebook. Facebook started with the idea that there was something that in a way that we relate to each other that could be potentiated using the media. I don't know if you've ever seen that film, and I recommend you to watch the film, even though the character I really dislike the owner of Facebook, but he was a clever student who was seeing how students were looking for making decisions about who to approach in terms of making acquaintances and connections with boys and girls and girls and boys and boys and boys. And that's the way Facebook started. It was a faces that you were flipping on the phone, and if you flip to one side or the other, you will be sort of selecting who to talk to and will be commenting on that. And from this idea, the sense of how we relate to each other came, and that's the genius you have to acknowledge of a person like Zuckerberg to see the potential that he had in representing or potentiating with the new media, things that we were doing offline in the physical world. And it worked like a charm because right now he's one of he owns one of the most influential companies in the planet, scary influential companies in the planet. Uh, People modify the original idea. And Zuckerberg and the group the team that he created were able to harness those ideas and to give them expression. That's a genius of Facebook, if anything. Um, and Facebook actually became a really interesting place for research in that Facebook basically what it does it will suck all of your information and sell your information. Whenever we create a new account on Facebook, we don't spend the time to read the small print. But what it is you will give away your birthday, your likings, your purchasing, your wantings. All of that information is then packaged by this individual and sold to companies that can target very specifically to you, so that you can actually look at them for your needs and your wants. And today they can even foresee what would be what you want to do. If they, for example, see that you have a pattern of traveling and want things and whatnot, they can imagine, okay, this person next year she might be interested in traveling to get to know the Grand Canyon. So there goes the information. They're selling your information to other individuals, and but they have done this in a very masterful way in that they have learned to understand how to um, how to encapsulate who we are in the social world and then to make it a commodity. Really interesting application, and that applies to many other new media companies that are out there. So it's just food for thought. Let's then explore these three aspects: disabilities, interpersonal communication, and social networking science. The outcomes for this week will be one is basically that exploration of what is ethnography, the potential of ethnography, disabilities, and learning about these aspects. But the most important outcome will be for you to start thinking about a potential community, virtual community that you might want to learn and know more about. And I'm going to be asking you to make a decision, an initial decision as to what kind of a virtual community you would like to be exploring with your hat as an ethnographer. And I will be taking you one step at a time in terms of how to do this exploration. First step is to start thinking about what questions to ask and the location where you would like to be doing your ethnographic exploration. All right, so that's going to be it for this lecture, for this second module of first unit. And I look forward to reading your comments and your interaction in the